Hello and welcome. My name is Robin. I'm a licensed shakuhachi instructor, and today I want to talk about 5 very common mistakes that I see beginning shakuhachi students do that are holding them back and how to fix them. So here we go. So number 1 is bad posture. This I think is by far the most common one that you see in beginning players, but also in more advanced players actually. And a lot of people out there kind of like to sort of lean forward, slightly hunch over, like the shoulders are kind of curving in, and it's almost like they're making themselves small. And I think that as a posture is pretty much in line with just a lot of the sort of personality types that feel attracted to the shakuhachi. I think a lot of people who are drawn to this instrument tend to be more introspective. They are not necessarily people who enjoy being too visible, to take in a lot of space, if you will. And so the tendency is to just kind of make yourself small and kind of bring this instrument really close. And I can kind of feel how this, there is something very intimate and just, you have the flute pretty close to yourself. I can sort of, this posture has a certain appeal. But I feel like it comes with certain disadvantages. For one thing is that your pitch is going to tend to be a little bit flat. There's going to be that natural tendency. Now it's possible to sort of bring the pitch back up. You can adjust back for it. But if you lean back a little bit from the get-go, raise the flute up, raise the elbows up, not only is it going to be much easier to be in tune, but it's also going to help open your sound a little bit more. And also, by bringing the shoulders back, lifting up the elbows, you're freeing up the rib cage, and that just creates a lot more space for you to really use the full capacity of your lungs. And also, as you lift up those elbows, it's almost like, your rib cage, your arms, and the flute are forming this sort of like interconnected unit that just sits on top of your stomach, your hara, where the power is, where you breathe into, and just sort of by way of gravity applies this natural pressure to it. So if you're up here, just like there is something about this posture that is just very self-supporting, and that's kind of what you're looking for. So don't slouch, bring the flute back up, bring the elbows up, lean slightly back, bring the weight to your sit bones or your heels. Number 2. This one feels kind of obvious, but it's actually, I see it again and again in absolute beginners, is having leaky flute holes. So basically not closing the holes properly. And this happens especially to people who have rather slender fingers. And if you're playing a bell shakuhachi, for example, the bell has relatively large holes. And then as the shakuhachi sort of slips, sometimes some people, that there's just a slight gap that opens in one of the holes. And especially the ring fingers are often sort of the culprits in this regard. So just make sure that when you're trying to blow row and it's not working, always double check that you're covering the holes properly, because if there's a leak, then you're not going to get a full row. And also, maybe if you bought like a used shakuhachi and it has a joint in the middle, like the nakatsugi, and if that is rather loose, then it could also be that you just have a little bit of a leak in the flute. And that could also interfere with you being able to produce sound on it. Number 3, shallow breathing. This is also super common among beginners, is that people tend to breathe kind of like, especially when they're trying to get out their first sounds, or when they're practicing muraiki, is that they start to breathe rather shallowly, and because basically, they're trying to produce a certain sound on the shakuhachi, and it's not quite working, and basically they want to try again and again, and they want to try again fast, and so they start taking these really shallow breaths, and what happens is that sooner or later they start kind of like hyperventilating because they're not breathing properly, and it causes the body to tense up, and it makes everything harder. So even when you're noticing that you're blowing on the flute and it's not quite doing what you want it to be doing, be sure to still remind yourself to take nice deep breaths. and lengthen your exhalation and really bring the full breath to its conclusion before taking another deep inhale. And just keep walking at that steady, slow pace, like you're gonna go further. Number 4, doing the Buddha smile thing. So there's a lot of people out there who kind of teach shakuhachi that you should be doing a slight smile. In our school, we actually don't teach that. I think doing the smile can be helpful, but in the beginning, I think it's better to forget about it, because making the smile, like if you just listen to my tone, what happens? Like I'm slightly exaggerating now, but you sort of notice that the sound does get louder and a bit more clear, but also the tone becomes less rich. The tone loses a little bit of its depth. And this is something which also slightly depends on preference. But I think like to really get the full warmth and depth and complexity of the sound of the shakuhachi, you want to avoid making too much of a smile, because it's going to take you in that other direction. And I think this style of playing is popular these days because for some reason I feel like many modern players, they tend to prioritize, like clean, basically having very clean and clear tone over having a lot of depth and sort of complexity and variance in color. And that's actually a bit of a shame, because it is exactly that depth and all of these different colors that make the shakuhachi such an interesting instrument. And you're much better off, trying to get the full sound by just doing the ah-oo thing. So going from an ah to an oo, pushing up the lower lip, leaving the corners of the mouth relatively relaxed. Focusing on opening the throat, staying relaxed, breathing from the stomach, but keeping the embouchure and the lips relatively soft, and also keeping the corners of your mouth soft, especially in the beginning. And then once you nail that, getting the full warmth of that sound, you can start experimenting a little bit with Buddha smile and just the extra power that you might be able to get with it. And finally, number 5, trying too hard. So when I started learning shakuhachi, the first year, I took like one lesson a month, and I practiced maybe 10 minutes a day, maybe sometimes more, I don't quite remember. But like the point being is that I really took my time, especially in the beginning. I didn't touch the kan register until like my second year, I think. And that's a little bit extreme. Like you can go faster. Like if you're sure about it, like you can like taking more lessons and practicing more definitely is definitely helpful. But that being said, is like you shouldn't try to, or at least I would advise you to not try to push too hard, especially in the very beginning when you're just trying to sort of practicing just making sound and all of these things, because it takes a lot of air in the beginning. Like you don't, like your muscles haven't developed. You don't have the technique, and playing shakuhachi can get very exhausting very easily, and you sort of get winded very easily. And the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to not fight that, but to just make sure that you're taking a lot of breaks and that your practice sessions aren't too long in one sitting. And then as you get better in the shakuhachi, naturally, like your practice sessions are going to lengthen and it's going to become more fun. But if you're sitting there and being like, I want to get the sound out of it, like in the beginning, just, trying won't help you so much, because it's actually more about exploration. You need to figure out the right configuration of your lips. And also you need to, your nervous system, like these muscles of your embouchure, they need to develop. So it's just going to take time. So it's better to consistently do a little bit, not pushing too hard while you practice, than trying to practice hard in that sense in one setting. All right, those were my 5 little tips for you. I hope these were helpful. Keep these in mind. And if you have any more questions, then just leave me a comment or send me a message. If you're interested in shakuhachi lessons, also just message me or go to my website. You'll find all the links in the description and so on. And keep enjoying your shakuhachi. Until next time.